Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the session 3 of our TypeScript Bootcamp. Thanks for joining us. I hope that everyone has been able to create the test for the smart contract. And today we are going to improve our front end to display all the listings. We are already expert in creating and testing smart contracts on Algorand using Python and TypeScript. But now we need to modify a few the user interface from our app. And please let us know on the chat if you are ready for the session 3 and also who is almost ready to claim the certificate of completion, but that is going to happen tomorrow because today we are going to learn a lot of things. The user interface is a pretty important component in all the solutions that we want to create. And okay, Giorgio, what we can expect from today's session? What are the things that we are going to learn?
Okay, so today we're going to again improve the front end, and we will start with a demo of the final product because we have seen a lot of code so far, and I think it's important that we visualize what our goal is, and so we take a look at the finished front end before we start writing any code to understand what are the functionalities that we would like to have. Then, as we mentioned, this is an improvement over the front-end code that we have from the Beginner Bootcamp in TypeScript. So the first thing that we're going to do is copy the code from the Beginner project into the new project for the Intermediate Bootcamp. And we already selected a full stack template, which means that we already have a front end with some code with the default front end, but that is only specific to the default template, and we need to override the files that are in the Beginner Bootcamp. So we will do those two things, a demonstration and copying files over. After that, we will watch the recordings from the Python Intermediate Bootcamp. Now, we already mentioned that even though we produced that content for the Python Intermediate Bootcamp, that content is exactly equivalent to what we do for TypeScript, because that is only the front-end part. And as we mentioned many times, AlgoKit makes your project modular. So it doesn't matter in which language your contracts are written, the front-end is always kind of written in the same way. So these are the two things these are the three things: demonstration, copying the code, and watching the recordings. And after that, we will answer some questions. Sounds good?
Perfect. And the important thing to mention is that we are going to use React. So during the Python bootcamp, we use React to create the front end, and it's the same framework that we are going to replicate for this session. So it's going to work in the same way. And as you mentioned, the important is the modularity. And for example, I love Python, but I realized that if I want to build a beautiful user interface, I need to use React. So we are ready. If you have any question, please remember to send them through the question tab. And yeah, the stage is Giorgio. We are ready to keep learning. And if you have any question, feel free to send to us. Okay, we are ready.
Okay. Let me set some things out of the way, first of all. Now I want to take a look at, I'm going to do a side-by-side okay, I think let's zoom in on this one a little bit. Maybe this is fine. This should be okay. Okay, so we mentioned that we start with a demonstration. And we have written the contract and the tests so far. So this is a modified version of the beginner frontend. As Camillo said, this is in React, and the frontend is common to all AlgoKit templates. So the official way to build a frontend for any AlgoKit project is always the same. This is, as Camillo mentions, this is why we are able to do this in a modular way. Okay, so let's connect. Oh, I'm already connected. Perfect. And so we will be able to create a new marketplace if we don't have already one. If you have one, we can paste the ID, but if we don't, we can create a new marketplace. We sign the transactions, and then we take note of the ID, which is 1016. We have no listings, and this section will update based on the amount of listing that we create for this application. This form will create a new listing, and it will also create a new asset for that listing. So obviously in a production version, you would want to work with existing assets. But in this way, to make the demonstration of AlgoKit easy, we are both creating an asset and putting it in the listing, in a listing. So let's say that we want to sell 5.5 units of a new asset, and we want to sell them at 1.03 algos. And of course, we write this number in micro algos. Click Sell New Asset. Okay, now when we update the page, we took note of the application ID, we can see that we have a new asset listed in this digital marketplace for the amount of 5.5 units at the price of, 1.03 algos. Now, we are also able to buy this asset. So for that, we need to specify the seller of the asset, which in this case is the account with which we are logged in. So we are able to copy from that. The asset ID that we want to buy is 1018. The nonce is always going to be zero for this demonstration. The price is 1.03 algos, and we want to buy 1.2 units. Of course, we write the whole numbers. Obviously, in a production UI, you would be able to use decimal numbers to explain all of this. And we have currently stored for sale 5.5 units. So let's buy 1.2. And we should refresh the page. And we can in fact see that the listing has changed into the quantity deposited has changed because we bought 1.2 units of that asset. So this is pretty much the end result of the frontend. So now we know, we have some idea of what we are aiming for. Let me stop the process. And so what I just showed you is the project in this folder. So let me paste the link, which is the same that we already pasted, but remotes. This is handled this way. In just a moment, I will paste the link. Okay, so this is the repository where this code is already written and it works, but we are writing code for another repository, local. And so let me close this one, and I want to bring over the one that we are actually writing. So you can check out the code if you want, but I'm going to have to do everything from scratch again because we're doing it together. So this is the repository that we're writing in this bootcamp. And as we mentioned, we want to copy the code from the beginner. So I'm in the beginner on the right-hand side, and I'm on the intermediate that we're writing now for on the left-hand side. So essentially, we only want to look at the project structure. We close everything, and we want to notice that we have a front-end sub-project in the beginner and the same for the intermediate one. So let's open those. And there are the files that we want to copy from the Beginner Bootcamp are in app, home, and methods. So we want to bring these three files, copy them, and paste them into source. Same folder, but in the intermediate. We want to overwrite all of them. I should have probably added this to Git. And then the last file that we want to copy is in source components. So components, and it's called method call. So we copy this and we paste here in components. And the only thing that we are missing to do, which I think I have already done in this project. Let's see. We need to install a package that we install for the beginner bootcamp, and that package is Tanstack React Query. So I think I can find it. Yes, here. So npm, copy and paste it in the chat. npm install Tanstack Query. Okay, so I still needed to add the packages to my project. And this is actually all that we need to do before we start with the recordings. So I would maybe wait a couple of seconds, and Camillo, whenever you want, if there are no questions, we can start with the recordings.
For sure. And in this way, we need to link the front end with the smart contract. You need to compile the smart contract first, or we are ready to start everything?
So yes, that's a good point, actually. We can, I don't think that we have to. Let's review that, because I think that will, I was showing it in the other bootcamp, just to give people an understanding of what's happening under the hood. But I'm pretty sure that if we take a look, for instance, at the scripts, yes. So whenever you start your development of the front end with npm run dev, a bunch of things are actually happening under the hood. And one of these is generating the clients, and building the contracts and all of that. But I can also, so you don't need to do anything manually, but just to give you an understanding of what happens under the hood, we can go and do a AlgoKit. So right now what we're doing is we're building the latest version of the contracts, because the contracts are sitting in a separate sub-project. So whenever they change, we want to make sure that whenever we work on the front end, we are working with the latest building of the contracts. So how do we build the contracts? If we are in the in this sub project folder, then we can do AlgoKit project run build. I'm going to show you an alternative way. So we are now in the root folder of the project. But if we specify project name, it will run the build command only for the contract sub-project. Okay, so we are in the latest version of the contract. Now we want to go into the project's frontend. And you will notice, for instance, that I think, let me check. So we already have a digital marketplace client in the front-end project, because the client from the contracts is imported automatically into the front-end project. But if you need or want to do that manually, you need to be in the front-end project folder and do AlgoKit project link. And this will ask you what contract project you want to link into the front end. Again, all of these steps are just optional, not even optional, they are just performed automatically, but we are seeing what happens under the hood. And once you have compiled your contracts and linked them to your front end, you're good to go. And okay, so I think let's start with the recording then.
Okay, let's start coding. And I mentioned that we wouldn't be using useEffect anymore to update the listings. So yeah, I think let's start there actually. And I tried doing more than one thing with this useEffect, and this is also the bug that you were seeing earlier on showing the listings. At the risk of making this a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to bring in a package that I encourage you to try in your React apps and that I have always find very, very useful and really solid package to use, and that's Tunstack query, if you know about it. Let me grab the command to install it and we'll go from there. Okay, here we are. So I use npm, so that's the command that I'm going to use. Let me copy that. If you use something else, of course, use the other variants of the command. And let's go back to the code. Paste. I'm gonna pause and resume it when it's done. Okay. So without going too much into the detail, Tunstack query, what it allows you to do is it allows you to delegate when to run some state update, where to store the state, what is that state dependent on, and overall it makes it much nicer. So I think, is there anything that we need to save from this function? So what is this doing? This is let's see, Yeah, right. No, we don't need this because this is assuming that there is only one cell and it is saved in the global state. What is this doing? Oh, I see. Yeah. We will not be using this because we will just copy manually the address of the seller when we need to refer to a specific listing or sale. So this is very important, and this is telling us that each time app ID changes, this is going to change. This is something that we will want to keep in mind now that we delegate this state update to Tanstack query. So I think let's so we will not be needing asset and set asset ID, but we will worry about that later. For now, let's do a let's set up Tanstack query, and actually let's go over to the documentation because I want to show you what you need to do to set this up. Okay, the important bit is this. So before we start using it, we want to wrap our application in this wrapper query client provider. So that's what we're going to do. We should go over to front end and home, perhaps. No, home is where we are right now. Yeah, app could work. What is main? Yeah, this is seem strictly related to React, so that's where we're going to do. We're going to wrap the home within a query client provider. We need to use a client which we didn't instantiate already, but let's call it query client. Nope, just query client. I hate it when my IDE does that. So query client. Okay, let's correctly wrap this. I need to space it this way and space this way. Okay, what we need is a query client that's equal to use query client. Is a new use query client. Is that right? I think so. So client, query client, and query client, it's new query client. Okay, so I got it wrong. It's a query client. Okay, perfect. I think I might have imported something by mistake, so let's clean it up. Okay, so this part is ready. Now, in our home file, what we should be able to do is use const and then listings query. Let's not decompose this object just yet, and we will use it as a single object, and we will, if you want to decompose it, there are guides to do that. So this should be a use query. Let's import that. An object argument, an argument object. Let me get rid of this pop-up. Okay, so there are essentially three things that we want to define here. We want to define a query key, and let's do listings and app ID. Okay, so this is the bit The query key is something that each query should have its own unique identifier. And so in essence, this has more deep meaning than this, but essentially if the app ID changes, this query is going to run again. This is the short version of it. Now, we want to write a query function now, and this is going to be an async function. Okay. Now, before we write this function, let me just set the third and last thing that we need, which is the stale time, and let's set this to 1 second. I don't think that this is crucial, and we could leave it out, but this is also helpful. For example, when the listings change, but the app ID doesn't, and that happens precisely when we create either a new listing or we buy something from a listing, and therefore we have to update the value. So this is not a perfect solution. Ideally, you would want to invalidate this query in the place where you are doing a mutation. These are advanced concepts that we will not explore, and setting up a stale time is fine. Okay, now we have to write the function that reads all the listings from a contract, and we will do this by first box names, by first listing all the boxes in the application. Get application boxes. This is what we want to do, and this takes the app ID. Okay. Oh, we are missing an await. Oh, and the other obvious advantage of using 10-stack query is that we can use the async await paradigm instead of relying on callbacks, which it's much nicer. Okay, so now we have all the boxes, and we want to actually read the content of these boxes. So I think let's do a const box contents, and now for each box name, for each name, oh, hold on, box, this is as a field called boxes, and this would be a list of box names essentially, and for each of these we want to map to so we have another async function that takes in a box name and ideally spits out the content that we want. So this is return, no, let's do things properly, box. So we are trying to get the content of the box. Hold on, can we get away with just doing return algorand client algod and get application box by name? Yeah, and again app ID and box name, and then do. So this will return, but this will return, I think, just bytes, just the bytes content of that box, and we want to do some decoding. Box name, volume properties. All right, let me check my notes in just a second. Yeah, I got it wrong. So this is just a box. Will it let me do a refactor? Oh yeah, box. And this is box.name. Perfect. Oh, and also what we want to do is we want to wrap all of, because this is going to return a promise, right? For, oh, we're missing an await. This is going to return a promise, a list of promises. We want to resolve all of them. So we will do this by saying an await promise.all to all these promises. And so yeah, the type hinting tells us that we are going to get a list of boxes, which is what we want. Oh, I'm not in the project for the front end. Lint fix. Okay. So is this fine? Well, I think that we don't want to return just the bytes content of the box. So let's do a single box content, and let's assign, my PC is slowing down, and let's assign this to that. So in order for us to do some decoding, we should return, well, at the very least, we should return the information about the sale. So we have said multiple times that this is the seller, which is going to be a string, and then the asset ID, and the nonce. Let's just remove this. We'll fix it later. And now we will also want to return how many assets are still left to be sold and at which price. So let's say just amount and unitary price. Okay. So the information about the key is in the box name. So the box name, it's a concatenation of the address followed by the asset ID and the nonce. So we should be able actually to use encode address. Yeah. And this is from box. This is from box name slice from 0 to 32, which is the length of one address. We need to import this, and we are importing this from the Algo SDK. So this is something that will take the bytes and convert them to a human readable format. For encoding a number, we have encode u in 64. That's it. And we want to do box name slice right after the address, so it's 32 plus 8, that's 40. And I think we want to do begin. No, that's not it. Hold on, let me check my notes. Hold on, where did we import this from? Yeah. Oh, I got it backwards because this is decode. Okay. And import from Algo SDK. Yeah. So now this is working. Essentially the same thing. So 40 to 48. Begin. Now the amount, this we have to read from the content. So we have to read from box content. Box content value, perhaps, I think. Yeah. Slice 0 to 8, begin, and last the code int box content value slice 8 to 16. Oh, and begin. We want to begin out of it. That looks good to me, honestly. But we did not use box content. Ah, yeah. So we want to. I think we can just avoid this temporary variable altogether and just return this. So this will be an array of this kind of object, possibly an empty array. We will handle the cases where this query fails and all of that. Just a word of caution, I'm committing capital sin by doing this because we don't know ahead of time how many boxes an application could have. And in our case, this is going to be a pretty small number. Just be aware that this number is the number of promises that you are going to try and resolve all at the same time with this code is without bounds. So as the number of listings grows, this code becomes very problematic quickly. So just a word of caution. It will not cause any problem right now. Okay, at this point, I think we want to start and display this information that we got through the query. And for now, let's not worry too much about where this content is. Let's just throw it in there and we'll make adjustments later. But it's important that we at least code and I show you how to display information from that list. Where would be a good place to put it? What is this? This is the app ID. This is the unitary price. I think let's create another section 4, the app, and put it here. So I think we want to label. Listings. And now we want to actually show the list. And let me just check my notes. Ah, yeah, okay. So I think that every list starts with UL. I apologize, I'm not I'm not a front-end person. Let's just do our best. And then yeah, we wanna say that, so for the listings query, let's say that if there is data there, we wanna we want to display a single in each element from that list. And so this would be a listing, and this should return a list element. Okay, it's kind of the note that I have, it's kind of a mouthful, so let me just copy it over and we'll break it down. Okay. Okay, so essentially what we just write? We said, okay, so if there's data as a result of that query, then each element, which will be a single listing, will be a string, this string right here, where we display not every information, but just what is essential for this interface. And so we display the asset ID, the amount that's left for the sale, and we will assume that we will just copy manually the seller address for the moment, and we will assume that the nonce is 0. And we will assume that for the nonce is 0 for the reason that each new sale we create a new asset, so we never get past nonce equal to 0. Last, the price. And now, why do we have to define a key? This is something that React requires, that each element, in order to do the minimal amount of updates, they want a key. They will give you a warning if you don't. I'm not sure that it really matters in this case because we refresh the list from scratch each time, but I'm not sure about it. But I know that it's better if we have a key there. Now I'm thinking, do we have any errors? Because I have well, let's just assume that this code kind of works, and let's go to the next recording where we removed the other stuff that we don't need for this contract, and we build the minimal amount of stuff just to run the UI and start doing some debugging if we need to. So I'll see you in the next recording. Welcome back to the next recording. In this recording, we are going to implement the minimal functionality to create a new digital marketplace contract that we can interact with, and some code to sell assets. So we can create listings and also be able to verify if they are showing up correctly. So I think in order for us to do that, let's start perhaps with the code that we already have that works, which is the create. That should be somewhere around here. Oh, it's here. Let's see. So we have put the listings for this. So I think let's move this portion of the code and let's paste it someplace after the create section. What's this? Asset ID, units left. I think it can go in place of this code, because this is just showing the single listing that we had before, but now we have multiple listings. And what are we missing? Hold on. So a divider. Let's have a divider here too. So this code is conditional with the app ID being different than 0. So I think that's what I want to do here too. So I think I will always want the dividers and the listing. So let's wrap this code in curly brackets, and normal parentheses and app ID different than 0 and this code. That should work. Okay. Right. I have to cd into the front-end folder. Awesome. Okay. So now we have a conditional display of the listings whenever the app ID is different than 0. Oh, actually, that brings us to another topic. We want to also have a condition on the displaying on the listings. And let me check my notes. That condition is, that condition is that this did not error out. So let's do listings query not is error and the result. Okay, so what this additional condition will do is that I think that TAN-stack query works such that data is still set to the latest successful run of the query. However, if the latest run was not successful, data should still be set to the latest successful, but the latest, like in the latest, if that results in an error, we have to check, and we don't want to read the data if the latest results in an error. So this is a condition that allows us to only display the data if the latest query was a success. And okay, so back on track. We wanna do something about the creation. And for that, I think we don't need a unitary price because we're going to have that in a cell, form. So I'm checking my notes, and yeah, I think this looks good. We have the app ID and a form with set app ID. Yeah, this should be good. Okay, so now we have to change the method create because this still takes a unitary price and a quantity. Asset being sold, we want to separate this out into more functions. And let's go to methods, and I think we don't need the unitary price and the quantity as not the asset being sold. Yeah. So we are going to create the asset to be sold in the sell method, so this can be removed. Okay, if we take a look at our contract, I just want to show you something. So we didn't create any specific method called create with create. So this contract actually can be created with the default creator. And the way that you call that from a client is you call create bear. Now, I don't know if we already talked about bear method, but it is essentially a way to call a contract that it's not exactly a method call, maybe we can get into the details of the difference between a bear call and a method call after this session, if anyone has questions on it. But the short version is that a bear application call encodes 0 return values and 0 arguments for that application call, and it behaves differently than a method call. So we don't need any argument or return value in the creation, and we're using the default constructor for a contract. So we are fine with creating it with a bear application call. So okay, we should modify this. We should fund only the minimum balance to hold algos. And if we take a look at the contract, we are not going to have just one asset in this contract because it allows for multiple sales, and this contract is going to opt in every asset that it will be a custodian for. And anytime that you call this allow asset method, we have to fund the MBA, the minimum balance requirement increase with a payment transaction. So we don't have to worry about also funding for an asset because we're going to fund each time that we allow a new asset. I don't think we need the extra fees because we're not doing any inner transaction at this moment. And opt into asset transfer, we don't need this because we're going to do this in the sell method. This is still good. We want to update the we want to update the application ID in the interface. Now the reason that I was getting confused is that this should be a send, not a transaction, and we can discard the return value because we don't care about it. Just checking if that's what I did. Yeah. Perfect. So we are not passing this payment in a method. We are just sending a payment to the contract, and that's it. Okay. So this would change this call right here, and we have to discard everything else. And so we have Algorand DM client, digital marketplace client, active address, and set app ID. Perfect. Yeah, this should be good. And I think we want to have a sell method. So let's do that. And export function sell. And I think at the very minimum we want an Algorand client and a digital marketplace client. So let me just check my notes. Okay, yeah. Okay, so the flow is going to be that we want to create a new asset, and then we want the contract to opt into that asset, and then we want to call the deposit method. So first step would be to create the asset. So set create result. This is equal to wait Algorand send asset create, and what params does this take? So this takes an asset create params. So at the very least it will be total, and we want to also use the decimals. Total I think let's do 10 units, but we're going to set the decimals to 3, so this has to become 10,000 decimals. This can be 3. Oh, I think this wants a big int. Ah, yeah, that's right. Does this fix it? Oh, the sender. Perfect. Okay, so we need to pass that as an argument to this function. It's a string. Perfect. Okay, so what is this error? Oh, we're missing an async export function. All right, my bad. We are returning a function, an asynchronous function. Okay, perfect. Okay, that looks better. And I said that now we want the contract to opt in that asset. So again, just checking my notes. Yes. Okay, perfect. So I happen to know that we will want to have the application address ready to go. So let's do that. And this is the DM client dot app client dot get app reference. There you go. And we want let's first write our goal, which is the DM client, and allow asset, and take a look at what. So allow asset wants an MBR pay and the asset. So the asset is the asset create result, confirmation, and asset index. Type. All right, because in principle this is returning a transaction that may have the new asset index in their set in their fields, but the type system doesn't necessarily know that because this is just a generic transaction and it's not inferring correctly that we are using, it's not just any transaction, but it's an asset create transaction. So I think in order to make the type checker happy, let's do a if asset create result, confirmation, and asset index. If this is not set, then we should throw an error. And we're missing an MBR pay transaction. So I think let's build the transaction MBR pay, and this is equal to a transaction and a payment, and this payment is from the sender to the app address, and the amount is algos, and it's 0.1. What is this? Okay. So I think this should be good. Let me check my notes. Yeah. I almost forgot that we want to also pass an extra fee because the application call is going to issue an inner transaction to opt in that asset. It will be this transaction here. Okay, so now we have allowed the asset into the contract and we should deposit it. Yes, so looking back at the contract, we have two methods, first deposit and deposit. Now, we know that by setting up the UI this way, we are only going to ever make one single deposit. Because for each time that we call the sell method, actually we are creating a new asset, right? So any deposit that we make, we only need one to deposit all the assets that we want to sell. However, just because we want to be able to at least, check that these methods work, we are going to split the deposit into two calls. The first will be a call to first deposit method, and the second call will be to deposit method. This is not something that you would do in production. In production, you would want to check on chain if for that asset and all the sell parameters, the seller already has a sale open, and you would want to only have the user sign one single method. But in this case, again, since the flow of this demonstration is that we do everything from scratch each time, we're going to split it every time. So we're going to have two calls actually. And let's say that we want first to have a call to first deposit. And in this case, the methods are a pay, so this should be an MBR pay, an asset transfer, the actual deposit, and I think the nonce, perfect, the nonce is always going to be 0, and the unitary price. Okay, perfect. So, oh, yeah. So at the very least, we know from this function definition that we want to get the unitary price as an argument. Right. And then I think I want to change the name of this transaction here because okay, this is an MBR pay for the MBR pay or allow asset. This is going to be a different one, and this is going to be a MBR pay first deposit, and we have to build that. So const MBR pay first deposit, this is equal to a transaction, that's a payment, that's going from the sender to the application address, and the amount is going to be 0.1, the amount necessary to opt into an asset. And I think at some point, no, we don't need extra fees because we're not doing any inner transaction. And we also need to build the transaction for the actual deposit. So this transfer will be a asset transfer first deposit. Let's build that too. First deposit. This is an algorithm transaction, and it's an asset transfer. Sender for receiver, which is the app address. And I like to set the asset ID as one of the first thing because that makes it more clear, quicker that that's an asset, that is a transaction involving an asset. So, oh yeah. So this is what we want. This is the asset that we just created. Number begin is not assignable to this. I think let's just convert this to a begin. Okay, so this is missing the amount at the very least. And how much do we want to sell? I think that should be an argument. Yeah, let's do that. So the amount, let's begin, and yeah, that's the amount that we. But hold on. So how are we going to split this first deposit into multiple transactions? I think since we cannot deposit an amount equal to 0, because this is one of the conditions that we have in the method, for first deposit and for deposit, we agree that it doesn't make sense to deposit a 0 amount, so I think let's deposit 1. Let's just deposit 1 in the first deposit. Now this has to be an amount. And this is going to be the first deposit, and then we are going to call just deposit method with the amount. Let's set it, it's going to be amount minus 1. Yeah, this is not the place for the amount. We want to set this to const asset transfer deposit, and this is equal to transaction and asset transfer. Now we want the amount here to be set to the wholesale minus 1 because we deposited 1 in the first deposit. And we don't need an MBR pay because the box is already paid for, but we still need, hold on, no, this is for this. So we want an exfer, it's an exfer deposit, nonce equal to 0. And I think this could be it because yeah, the price is already set and the box is already paid for. So what's missing from here is the asset ID, which is just this line. Sender and receiver to the app address. Okay, I think that looks good. Yeah, that should work. I think we wanna try and run this code at this point. I would like to see how the UI behaves with this code. So I think let me just pause the recording for a second and set up a view so that we can see the application being ran, and I'll start the recording back. Okay, let me try and switch to the application view. There we go. Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to log out and log in again to confirm that we have everything set up properly. This is not working. Let me pause for a second and figure it out, and I'll catch up with you in a second. And we're back. Sorry about that. I realized that my Docker froze up. That can happen when your your PC goes to suspension mode, and it freezes up, like things like that are virtualized, like Docker. So I restarted everything, and now we should be good to go. So let's try that one more time. So cd into the projects for the front end and npm run dev. Oh, nice. npm run dev will link the projects for you before starting the browser environment. Let me load up the application, switch to the view. Okay, again, let's try that one more time. Localnet. Okay, good. We are logged in. And I also reset like the local net just out of caution. So we have a create marketplace correctly here because the app ID is 0, but I don't like this divider. So let's modify that. So this is the create, and these are the listings. Oh yeah, this is the divider that we don't want. Cool. So we have the form for the app ID, and then we have the button. So this should have updated live the interface. Let's switch to that, and we don't have the divider anymore. Very good. So let's try and create the marketplace. Okay, so we have an app ID of 1001. We will take a note of this because for the next iteration, let's say that we refresh this page, we want to keep note of this ID. It might be different on your local net depending on how long have you reset, how long since you have reset your local net. Okay, so we don't see the actual fields for the cell function, so let's do that. I think we want to, yeah, this looks like the old cell form. So, oh no, this is the old by form. So we need to make our own cell form. And I think for that, let's create a divider. And in here, we're going to write the code. I'm just going to check my notes and see what we need. Right, okay. So we need two fields. Hold on, am I showing you the code? Oh, I'm not. Okay, here we are. So I just I'm just right under the create form, and I'm putting a divider here and here between the listings and the create. And we want to go up to the various states of this component, and we want to have two new states. One is called amount to sell, and set amount to sell. This is a state begin that defaults to 0. Well, not defaults, but the initial state is 0. And then we want to have a selling price. Set selling price. We want to have forms for this. So let me just copy what we have here. And this is going to be amount to sell. Type number, that's good. And this is going to be amount to sell, and we want to set amount to sell. What's that? Oh, right. Big int is not assignable to type. Okay, how can we convert to string? Probably that works. Yeah. And this is a number, right? So I think we want this to be a big int or a zero big int. Let's check if the UI is updating. Yeah, right. We want, this is the amount to sell. Okay, so let's do the same for the, what was that? The selling price, of course. And I think we just want to copy this. And this is selling price. Selling price and set selling price. No, set selling price. Okay, and I think we want to have this conditionally show up if we are actually, if we have an application ID set to something, right? So I think let's wrap this around curly brackets and then normal parentheses, and this is app ID different than 0 and this code. Must have one parent element. I don't understand why this is not working. Yeah, sorry, that's my bad. I should have wrapped this whole form in a div, and then I can wrap this around JavaScript code. So we should see at this point that the interface is conditionally showing up or not. So if we set this, okay, we get the form to sell. And I think we want to set it to the old application ID that we had and try to sell something at this point. But we're missing the button. So Let's do that. This is a method call. Perfect. This is cell methods, cell. Yep. Oh, we have to change the arguments. The text is create new listing. Okay, so what are the arguments? Algorithm client, the digital marketplace client, sender, amount, unitary price. Algorithm client, sender, amount. So the amount is amount to sell, and the unitary price is the selling price. Active address. Oh, okay, yeah. So then let's put another condition here. Active address. Okay, so if we have an app and an address, perfect. Okay. This should have updated. Let's go to the interface, to the web UI. And oh, I think, well, let's keep it like this for the moment. And so amount to sell, I think that we set the total to 10 units, right? Let me check. So yeah, the new asset is going to have 10 units, so we cannot exceed that. And we also should not go below 2 because we split the deposit methods into 2 methods, and each of them must be at least 1. So the minimum that we can try to sell is 2 units. Well, not 2 units, but 2 of the lowest denomination that we can. So I think let's try to sell 3.1 units and at the selling price of 2 algos. So 2 million micro algos, create new listing. I think this ended up as an error. Yeah. This is failing. Oh, I see. Yeah. I had this error also when writing the first time the code. So I can see from this stack trace that we failed an equality check against 28,100. So now I happen to know that this number is exactly, let's go to the code. This number is exactly the, hold on, the for sale box MBR. So I know that the error is that in this, somewhere in the first deposit when we are creating the box, where is it? Here. Okay. So in this first deposit, we are passing 0.1 algos, and I mistakenly thought that we were passing something to opt in an asset, but that's not right. In this, we already opted into the asset, and this should be the MBR increase for the box. So I think let's copy this formula over, and this will be an amount in micro algos. in microalgos. And I think let's convert them to Begin. I don't think that for this for numbers this small it makes actually a difference. Oh, we cannot. Okay. Yeah, this should work now. Update the UI, go back to here and reset the page, type in the ID of the app, and we said the number, not a number, cannot be converted to Begin. It's not an integer. Huh. This is the amount to sell. I see. I think. Oh, I never switched. I'm sorry. I never switched to the UI view. I just got an error here saying that there is a failed conversion to Begin. And by clicking on the stack trace, I can tell that it's the line that converts the amount to sell field to a Begin. So I think let's go to the code this time. And we wanna change these two lines essentially. Let me check my notes and see how I did it. Okay. I think it's sufficient to wrap this OR within the Begin conversion. Okay. Switch to the app view. And let's keep the console open, but reset the page. 1001 amount to sell. We said 3.1 units at a selling price of 2 algos. So 2 million micro algos, create new listing. Okay, it seems to have successfully ran. I think let's update this page and check if the listings are showing up. Okay, so yes, they are. Yeah, so we can see although it's strange that it didn't catch this update automatically, because I think that we set the stale time of this query to 1 second, so at the very most every second it should try to catch new data. But yeah, here we are. So we can see that the asset ID is 1007, and we can see that the deposited amount is what we said, and the price is 2 algos. So yeah, so this confirms that we wrote the query function for the listings correctly, and we can create new listings. And so I think that we are going to work on the buy form in the next recording, and I think that will be the last recording, but let's see once we get there. I'll see you in the next recording.
So thanks, Giorgio. I know that we are going to pause, and tomorrow we are going to resume the recording. And today we learn how to modify our user interface. So our digital marketplace now support almost all the functionalities that we add to our smart contract in session 1. And I always mention this, but the purpose of this bootcamp is through a project to show you the latest in developer tooling. And with this content, you can use and replicate the same structure to build your own project. That is the important part. And I want to thank Giorgio for preparing the content for this bootcamp. And this is a huge effort, but I think the community really appreciate this kind of content. So Giorgio, what we can expect to learn in tomorrow's session?
Tomorrow we will finish today's session, which we couldn't finish in time, and we apologize for that, but we will finish front-end content, and we will work on an auction system so that people can make bids to listings and sellers can accept these bids.
Okay, so tomorrow we are going to add that part of the auction, and yeah, I'm a few sad because tomorrow is going to be the last session, but I know that we have been learning a lot and we also want to improve. That is why in the next few days we will send you a follow-up email with the recordings and a survey so you can give us your feedback about these bootcamps. We want to improve. I don't see questions. Douglas definitely appreciated this. Thank you, Giorgio. I know this is a pretty huge effort, and for all of us is a meaningful content, and the most important part is to take a look again of the recordings, try to replicate everything, and if you have any question, you can contact us on Discord. Giorgio, when you are planning to update the code, I want to compare from the one that I got. Joel asked.
The code for today's session is already uploaded to the repository.
Okay, wonderful. So Joel, you have everything, so you can compare your code, and I hope that everything is working perfect. But yeah, that is the beautiful thing about this bootcamp, that you can try to follow along the content, and afterwards you can compare your code with the repo.
What I type, so you're right, Joel. The content that we are typing now is different than the content that's already uploaded. I can upload it today, honestly, right now, actually, because tomorrow we're going to have a live session to implement the auction. So we will have the same starting point. So I will do it right now, and we will share the repository with you. Actually, I'm not sure. Camilo, can we send messages to the participants of the bootcamp?
Yeah, definitely we can do it.
Okay, perfect. We'll do it that way then.
Okay, perfect. We don't have any more questions. Any additional comment, Giorgio, before we end today's session?
No, I just am excited and a little bit sad too for today's session, because it will be the last one, but it will be a pretty interesting one.
Okay, awesome. So thank you all for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you in tomorrow's session. Tomorrow we are going to share the certificate, the link, so you can claim the certificate of completion, and you still have time to participate in the global hackathon. So thank you so much, and see you tomorrow.